Oh dear. It's not queuing, you haven't gone live. You're in there, but it's... there we are. Right, I'm not sure it's recording, but never mind. Okay, folks. Welcome once again to the Inworld Review, part of the Metaverse Week in Review. And today... It's definitely 2013 still, but until I get to my little thingy here, I can't tell you the date. Yes, it's the 7th of April. So welcome back. I'm Mal Burns. My organic self, as we say, is in London, in the UK. And I went out this week at one point and it was snowing. Unbelievable for April, really, but that's another matter. At least we can all dwell on our tropical islands here in Second Life, where it's, well, much more pleasant, shall we say, than the organic sim, as some would call it. Anyway, welcome to the show. I'm joined by some guests. We'll be meeting them very shortly. Meanwhile, it's incumbent upon me to start the show with my sort of headlines of the week, really. And two fairly major items, which I think we're going to be discussing as the show goes by. As you saw from the clips, if you're watching live on Metaverse Week in Review, we've got the Steampunk Expo, of course. It was the 5th anniversary of an open sim grid called Metropolis, very popular one, that. And what else? Yes, we had Drax the Pre's little feature on Eshi Otoara. And we had Christine Showmaker featured in another piece. So that was sort of just getting it in and ready, so to speak. Now, the main news, apart from the birthday of Metropolis, is, well, two. Firstly, a couple of days ago, April the 4th, the technical press revealed that Philip Rosedale, Second Life's founder, has successfully raised just short of $2.5 million US for his new stealth startup, which we now know to be called High Fidelity. And it's they've raised 2.4 million out of what is described as a 3.4 million round. Now, I'm not quite sure how these things work, but I presume that means he's got another million he's still after. It's an interesting sounding startup. Now they seem to be pitching themselves as applications or sort of prototyping technology for next generation web and things. But in particular, they have focused on prototyping the technology and user experience of a next generation virtual reality system. An expansive vision with a number of moving parts that are each unique and compelling new technology. Now, we don't really know much more about this, whether it is a hardware-focused kind of thing when it talks about moving parts, and how much it may resemble or be influenced by the work done by Philip in creating Second Life, of course. We'll be eyeing this pretty thoroughly, I think. But needless to say, the news is out. It's no longer a stealth startup, and I think we can assume that virtuality, in one way or another, is going to be an important part of the whole deal. Now, interestingly, of course, Second Life, which is Lyndon's platform, it's in fact where we film this, may be about to become quite seriously affected by what I guess you could call this new government legislation in the States, because the US Treasury Department have an enforcement arm called FinCEN, and it appears that it's going to be imposing new rules on virtual currencies, whether centralized or decentralized. And it would mean that because the Linden dollar, Second Life's currency, is tradable for the real world dollar, or any other currency for that matter, it would actually count as a currency and be subject to all the taxation and verification systems and everything else that a real world bank would have to do. And from Lyndon's point of view, Linden Labs that is, this would be no minor thing, because the bureaucratic kind of paperwork involved and the responsibilities involved in handling currency would require, I imagine quite expensive extra work on behalf of Linden Labs. And unlike their users, I rather suspect Linden Labs will be obliged to talk to the government. So we'll be discussing that later, I think, too, and bring you more news as and when we get it. So, just checking out. So, the Pixie viewer, the OpenSim viewer that's on the web, is limited to Pixie's own sim at the moment. Yet another user interface updated this week. It is coming on, visually at least, by leaps and bounds. So, that is very good news indeed too. Anyway, we'll be getting to Inworld news from Second Life and the like a bit later on when we really get the chat going, as it were. But for the moment, it's time to hand over to my partner, Tara Yates, for her roundup of the Week in Review. So over to you, Tara.
Well, thank you, Mel. And greetings from the U.S. upper left-hand corner, as we sometimes refer to the Pacific Northwest, where after last weekend's wonderful sunshine, we've returned to typically gray, gloomy, rainy weather. Although we have not had snow at the lowlands like Mal reports from the London vicinity, which is pretty appalling to think of lowland snow at this time of year. But anyway, well, I'll make a few comments on both the money thing and Philip's latest project after I cover a couple more items. And as I'm prone to doing, if I have an item that's in the severe geek element, I kind of like to start with that. That's the Eat Your Vegetables segment, and then we can move on to less incomprehensible things. You know, eat your vegetables. Eat your vegetables first, and then you can enjoy the rest of the meal if you don't like vegetables. Anyway, NRPay is my current favorite go-to for kind of keeping tabs on what's going on in Devland in Second Life, because she goes to all the Inworld meetings and reports back on them in some detail, and her reports are good and to the point, and she tends to actually get the significant details as well as the minutia that only a dev can love. And the subject is server-side baking. Now, server-side baking is not you mix up a cake at home and you stuff it in your microwave, stuff it in your modem, and send it up to Second Life, and it returns via modem a fully baked cake. Server-side baking refers to how the textures on things get baked, so they're actually what shows up. And this is a project that's been in the works and in the development process for, oh jeepers, at least a year. And the difference is, currently, when you arrive in Second Life and you see your avatar and you see the world around you, textures have to bake on basically on the viewer side. So that explains why, for example, if you change your outfit and you're someplace where somebody else is, it may not show up as a clothes change to them at the same time or even close to the time that it does for you. And with the whole point of server-side baking is to improve how that behaves. Instead of the brunt of the heavy lifting happening on your desktop, it'll be happening on special servers, specifically designed to handle that. So it will improve. It should improve how quickly textures appear. It should improve how easily changes occur for other people when you make changes. But the thing that I think everybody needs to be aware of is this is going to be a forced march when it comes to viewers. And what I mean by that is if you persist in clinging with your fingernails to a viewer that is prior to when the actual release viewers start coming out that support server-side baking, then all of a sudden you're going to see a lot of gray avatars. And they will never, and they may be gray avatars with attachments that have textures, but the avatars themselves will stay gray. So what's basically going to be happening is we're going to start seeing fairly soon some viewers being introduced that support server-side baking. And they will also support the current way that textures are handled. And that's before they roll out the server-side piece of it. But once they roll out the server-side piece of it, there's no going back, which means if you're still using an old viewer, that's when you're going to get gray textures that won't resolve. So the word is that the server-side baking piece has now gone into the development viewer, and it's expected that it's going to be in a beta viewer before long. Now, it's still going to be a while before it hits the main viewer, but just to be aware that it's coming. So you'll see it. There's discussion already taking place with third-party viewers. So, for example, there's been some blog posts for the Firestorm on the work that they're doing, because the third-party viewers are also working with it. It's going to be kind of, I think we can easily expect that there will be some some hiccups when this stuff starts really rolling out into actual production servers, especially when, for example, Second Life flips the switch and turns on the server side of server-side baking. So stay tuned on that. We've had our vegetables for today. We can go back to cake, even though Slimmy isn't here to enjoy that. Anyway, let's see. The other thing that happened this week, and this is actually live now, is the Chewy viewer, an official Second Life viewer, has been released and is now available for your downloading pleasure as the main Second Life official viewer. Chewy is not, seems like it's an awful lot of food talk here. It stands for communication, centralized communication. Communication Hub User Interface. There we go. Yeah, you say Chewy long enough, and you start spelling it differently. Basically, the Chewy feature puts all of the communications bits for IMs and group chats and regular local chat into a single window that you have a bunch of controls over that you never have had before. Now, my basic read is there's some nice things in it. If you're already using Firestorm, it's not a whole lot different than what you can already do in Firestorm. So it's almost, I suspect that some of the things that have been taking place in third-party viewers have been picked up by the Chewy interface. But it definitely, I think it's definitely an improvement. It also rolls in pieces of voice. So voice one-to-one conversations, and some of those that have been in their own little windows are now accessible in the Chewy window. So I'd suggest, especially if you do a lot of in-world communicating, a lot of IMs, a lot of group chat, a lot of voice chat in world, I'd suggest you upgrade to the current viewer and give it a try and see what you think. And check out the Linden Lab blog, the official Second Life blog. There's a video there that'll give you kind of a quick walkthrough of the new features on that. Let me see here. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, yeah, I haven't introduced my little friend here. This little green friend here is. This is on a lighter note. This is an almost freebie in a hunt that's going on through Tuesday, being done by a group called. Where'd it go? Oh yes, Acid Lily. Oh. Acid Lily Gallery is kind of a neat shop. It's actually a sort of collective, and there's probably about a dozen different creators who contribute items, and some of it's clothes and some of it's household stuff. They're interesting and good designers, and they're having a hunt at the moment. The hunt object is a wonderful little ladybug, and this guy, who is a Shrubbles, is created by Mishmish, and for the mere sum of 5 lindens, you can go hunt and find the Shrubble and have one of your very own. And actually, you can carry them around. They're meant to be a carried pet, but unfortunately, doing so with sitting in this chair, they don't behave. The animation doesn't quite work when you're sitting down in a chair. But anyway, that's that. And for information on how to get to it, I'd suggest going to the blog. Which is acidlilygallery.wordpress.com, and there's a link, and there's pictures of the prizes and a little bit of information. It's a single sim hunt, so it's not multi-sim hunts like some of them are. I thought the item from Philip on high fidelity was kind of interesting, and certainly intriguing. And reading through the description at the site, they do have a website, highfidelity.io. There's a lot of talk about latency. And latency, for those of you who aren't in the music business, is there's this little problem. It's called the speed of light, and the speed of sound, and the difference between the two, and particularly the speed of sound, which controls. For example, when you're talking with someone, there's these little pauses you get, especially if you're talking to somebody on the other side of the planet, and that's affected by how fast sound moves. And as I think anybody who's online can appreciate, the latency issue also is involved in how long it takes for something you do to reach somebody else. Via internet connections, and that's where your own bandwidth and speed get into the picture. So there's a number of mentions of latency. So I really wonder what they're doing in that realm, because it sounds like that's an area that they're really looking at. They say that our charter is broad. Work on big ideas. Whatever that may. How do we reduce latency among people interacting online? Let me see, what else here was there. How will online destinations be powered? Vast purpose-built server farms operating at a staggering scale rule the day. Are there other ways to efficiently organize and deliver massive computing power? That's another question. This is I'm just quoting directly from what limited information there is at the website. Obviously, Philip has put together something that some fairly well-off investors are willing to pony up, given the amount of money that they've raised so far. Yes, and Mel, it's just in the world of fundraising on this kind of thing, the round is what the target amount is that they're after. So the fact that they've raised 2.4 out of 3.4 million suggests that they probably reached a point where they feel confident they'll get the rest, and by doing a little news release, they're getting more attention from people who might say, "Oh, Philip Linden's involved in this. Let's go pony up." So, it will be very interesting to see what comes out of this. Given Second Life, even if it hasn't become the taking over the universe that I think a lot of people thought it might. I'm going to be interested in hearing what everybody else has to say about that. And the virtual currency thing, I think you pretty well covered the news piece of that, and that is that Linden Lab is no longer going to be able to probably treat Linden dollars as just tokens. As far as the U.S. Treasury is concerned, and how that plays out could be a very interesting process. So there seems to be a feeling that there's not enough definition yet on exactly what that means, how it's going to translate on the street. for those affected, for the companies affected. The early read seems to be that, for us individually, it's not likely to be in effect unless, of course, you're trying to launder money, and then that's always going to be something. If you're laundering money wherever you're doing it, you've got yourself painted in a bad corner, I think. Anyhow, let's see. I think there was one other item I had here on my list, and I'm not seeing it at the moment. So I think I'm going to toss it back to you, Mal, and I'm betting that other people are just dying to jump in on one of the various interesting news items that have come up this week.
Indeed. Well, thanks, Tara. I'm sure they are. I would just make a quick comment of my own on the Philip thing. I mean, apart from being, I think, a visionary, Philip Rosedale, of course, is a physicist, and I think it's often forgotten that he was responsible for a lot of early work on things like image compression, fractal compression of images, and of course sound compression with Real Player and stuff. So the thought that he's actually involved in the idea of what could be compression or the mechanisms for speeding up sound files you indicated. It's quite interesting. I've always considered sound on the web to go at the speed of light, fiber optic wise, because it's converted to data before it's moved. But I'm probably got a very simplistic view of things there. Something I did during the week, incidentally, was I've been neglecting since Reaction Grid disappeared as an OpenSim installation. I've neglected my hyper jumping on the hypergrid quite a lot, and I was in World this week. I was very surprised to find my avatar in Jacadia, which is my avatar with a huge inventory, nearing almost as big as my Second Life inventory. It's my main hypergrid avatar, and you couldn't hypergrid anymore, so I signed up for OS Grid, and I've started a new avatar there to be my hypergrid avatar. And one thing we did, I couldn't unfortunately get hold of Fleet today to see if she could come on, but one of the things we did do, I was showing off to some of the Metaverse TV people some of the mechanisms for hypergridding, and we hopped over to Fleet Grid, which of course is Fleet 2's grid, and I was very surprised to see that the auditorium and the event build for Avacon is now fully built and attached to Fleet Grid. So hopefully we will get on here before long to tell us all about Avacon. However, as we found out last week, and we're going to find out more, I'm sure, this week, one of the big events other than Avacon, which will be based on OpenSim, is of course Second Life's big Second Life birthday, by whatever name you want to call it. It is 10 years of Second Life, and celebrating that is going to be a big event, and I'm sure Saffia is going to be telling us more about the community event stuff, for want of a better word, when I hop over to her. The other thing that I just thought is worthy of mention, sorry again, my wire's tangled here, this week is reflecting on the days when I was a publisher, and I mean good old paper and ink publishing. One of the things you always had to do as a publisher was the moment you had something printed, you actually had to send a couple of copies along for free to the British Library for the National Archives. And oddly enough, this is something that's never been fully sort of replicated by any method online. But the law this week, in the UK at least, has changed, which means that the British Library now have to be in receipt of and be able to back up, copy, or new websites coming online in the UK. So the National Archives in the UK will contain all websites from now on, which I think is very good news. And if you're worried about copyright, sorry folks, British Library will not pay you for copyright when copying your site. It's the law. You have to provide it to them for free for the archives. I wish that the Internet Archive worked the same way, to be honest. Anyway, that's just a bit of incidental news that's always worthy of a bit of conversation. So, time to open up discussion, I think, and let me introduce everybody who's on the seats here. Next to me, on my right, really, Saffia Widdershins, as always. Welcome, Saffia.
Hello, Mal. Hello, audience. It's good to be here.
And over on the other side of Tara, in fact, we've got two regular guests as well. One is Rambler. Hi, Ham.
Hi guys, hi everybody, nice to be here again.
And next to Ham we have Petlove Petshop, who is also on our camera, but she's always welcome on the sofa too, because she's really interesting to have in the chat. Welcome, Petlove.
Hi, and thank you.
So, I think we'll start by switching to Saffia as ever, to maybe bring us up to date with the birthday and the fantasy fair and all sorts of other things that are happening. And then, well, we'll widen the discussion onto the birthday then and the other things on the agenda, so to speak. So, over to you, Saffia.
Hi. Well, yes, the fantasy fair is approaching rapidly at the moment, and the people who are having stores at Fantasy Fair should have received their stores this weekend. They get sort of tryout versions because they're going to be building around and inside the stores that have been created by designers. So they get models of the stores to act as kind of templates to build in. And they went out this weekend, and if you're on the Fantasy Fair chat, you'll have heard lots of squeals of joy and pleasure, because they're really enjoying seeing what's being created for them. I have seen some of them myself, because I'm currently working on a documentary about Fantasy Fair, and they are gorgeous. Some wonderful, wonderful builds this year. Something else that is quite fun is Fantasy Fair Radio has gone live early, and if you like music that is sort of mystical and interesting and unusual, you can listen to Fantasy Fair Radio and hear it there. It's actually got a slightly difficult name to find it on. I was just looking on the Fantasy Fair website to see if they have a link to the radio, but they do have. It's well worth having a look at the Fantasy Fair website. They've got some beautiful posters that have been created for Fantasy Fair, so it's well worth having a look. And that's just Fantasy Fair SL, all as one word. Remember, there's an E in fair. Fantasy Fair SL.wordpress.com, and there's lots to find out there. It's really fascinating. Oh yes, and there is a link to Fantasy Fair Radio, so you can get your fix. I was listening the other night, and there's things like Howard Shaw's music for Lord of the Rings and the theme to Game of Thrones, which always kind of gets me going.
Interesting to know.
And that's being done by Xander Green, so it's an old friend, so well worth listening to. And Fantasy Fair is going to be running the end of April. Among other things, we're going to be relaunching Quest for the Golden Prim there. But once you have recovered from Fantasy Fair, at the end of May comes the next big event, which is the Home and Garden Expo. And I've heard that all the stalls for all the places for the Home and Garden Expo have sold out. They're having it's the Home and Garden Expo and the Breedables Fair, and the Breedables is always a very popular part of the Home and Garden Expo, of course, and but that's all now sold out. So
well, actually, I was being asked, Deb's Region, it's a friend of the channel.
Hi, Debs.
Yes, she's watching in on the live stream, of course, asking if is it too late to get places at Fantasy Fair specifically, I think she was referring to.
I'm not sure. I think it is,
okay.
But you can try if you want to. I mean, they may have had sort of last-minute dropouts. That does sometimes happen. you would need to approach Elizabeth Tinsley, I think, which is Tinsley, and Elizabeth first name. But I think they sold out quite a while ago. But I mean, you know, there's always things that go wrong and people can't make it, so it's probably worth just asking.
What we have places left for, of course, is the birthday.
Because applications don't go out until next weekend. There will be application forms, and at the moment we're talking about putting them into different languages to help people who don't speak English complete the form. What will probably happen is people will have help to fill out the as many languages as we can get people to translate into. They will have advice and help how to complete their form. There is a whole range of things that people can apply for when the applications go out. Obviously, one that most people think about is builds. There will be the same kind of plot areas as there were last year, and all the details of this are on the website. You can apply to have a building plot and to create your own build, which should go with the theme of SL10B Community Celebration, which is looking forward, looking back. But that's only the start, because there are lots of other roles that we need people to fulfill. There's a whole range of volunteer roles of hosts and security and stage staff. The applications will also be for people who want to perform. They will be for people who want to speak or give presentations, because there will be an auditorium, as there was last year, which will be hosting talks and conversations. There'll also be a place for press people. We need press people, as I've said. We need translators. This is going to be huge. It's the 10th birthday, and this is the community celebration, and we need all of you. We need the community, basically, to come in and help.
If I can add, actually, of course, during the week, I think the Facebook group was already there, but we've started a Google Plus community for it, which has been based on initial mail-outs. We've been getting loads of people joining up for that. So have we got the addresses for those offhand? I'm going to look, but we should plug those as well.
I need to put the Google Plus one into the material. At the moment, I can tell you the SL Community Celebration website is all one word, slcommunitycelebration.com, and then the other ones that you can link to are the blog is slcommunitycelebration.com/blog. Flickr has is flickr.com/groups/SL Community Celebration. You may be seeing a pattern here. Twitter is twitter.com/SLB Community, slightly different there. And Facebook at the moment has a rather tedious name, but it's all on the SL Community Celebration blog, those links, and we must get up the Google Plus one as well. Yeah.
Right, we've actually got Daniel Boydger in the studio chat. He's busy typing in the right L there and everything else. So Daniel is the one who set up the Google Plus one, by the way, so I'm sure he can point you to that. Yeah, good news. That really took off. Within 24 hours, we got over 100 people in it, and I've lost count what it is now. It's plus.google.com, and the actual you need to go to communities. The community number is, if you're not on the channel watching live, I'm going to give it you. So 10935118439503442544417. Please don't ask me to repeat that. Okay.
Is this a memory test?
Well, for those with good ears, you never know, it might have come in useful. Right, so is anything more immediately on the birthday here?
No, I think really at the moment what we can say is watch out for Craps videos, which will be coming out regularly.
Yeah.
And read the website. Information will be on the website April the 15th, and we will be telling you all about that before April the 15th. That's when it goes live. You've got a month to apply for everything. There's training. If you want to do one of the roles, there'll be plenty of training. There'll be a role for bloggers. There's something for everyone. There really is something for everyone. So just read the website and then apply whatever you want to do.
Great. And anybody out there involved with publicity, do publicise it too. The more publicity we get for this, the better. We want to make it viral, and as Saffia indicated with translations, make sure that some of the foreign language communities get to know about it too. So it really is a global affair. Okay, so let's shift over to Ham for a minute or two. Ham, welcome again.
Thank you.
Any particular news from you before we go into general?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. But the first one I just wanted to point out for the people who are sitting looking at this live on the Metaverse Week in Review website, you may have noticed that we all appear to be scratching our heads quite a bit. The furniture here in the outdoor area appears to be infested with fleas. So I do apologise if we all appear to be scratching ourselves just a little bit.
Not only fleas, a few other things too here.
Well, there's all kind of other animals here too, but I don't want to blame them. And hopefully Mal will get this sorted for next week, and we'll talk to him about medication. The main thing I really wanted to cover, I suppose, now that the news is out officially, is Philip Rosedale's a new venture, shall we say. Last week, when I was with the group here, although I didn't talk about it online, I did regale to the guys a story about how I met up with Philip briefly in Dubai about a month ago now. And we spent a day together because he was killing time between coming out from Saudi Arabia and going back to San Francisco. And in fact, he alluded to this project, which has now been sort of formally opened up, shall we say, to the community. And one of the things he talked to me about at length was being able to have a system whereby, particularly musicians, I think he would be one of the best examples, where you could have a band playing live with their individual microphones doing their stuff, and it could be streamed into Second Life 2 or whatever this new thing will be called, in such a way that it would be completely synced. I presume the reference in here to this sort of high fidelity kind of concept would be a reflection of that. So it would be a huge development for a virtual world kind of thing if it goes down this road. We've yet to see, of course, what it will ultimately end up looking like, and whether it will still be a quote Second Life, or Second Life 2 or Second Life 3 or whatever you want to call it, or whether it'll just be something completely different, and what that would do to the actual original Second Life project as it's ongoing. Apart from that, I will be obviously as nervous as everybody else to see what happens if the Linden dollar becomes formally, which looks like it will be. It'll be a virtual currency and have to be recognized as such, and therefore the US government will get involved, and I can see it all going very, very messy very, very quickly. Apart from that, I have nothing else to report. Dublin is still working away and busy. I have been commissioned, I mentioned some time ago, I don't know if you caught up on it, but a professor from the University of Western Australia and a Swiss team won a virtual teaching award. They won the European Case Clearinghouse Innovation Award for a project they did in Dublin and in Second Life, on centering around the Dublin project called Selling Green Dots in Second Life. And now they are being funded to set up a large community-based project within Second Life to enable the students from 3 different universities to work together on ongoing projects involving that area. So I will be putting back on my building hat, I think, for the first time in a long time.
I did actually download. They were too long to show here, but I forget whether it was. I think it was UWA who published them, but there were a number of machinima films of Dublin presentations at the UWA, yes. Which were quite interesting. I mean, as I say, they were too long to run here, but it's quite interesting to see. Dublin presented, as an exercise, shall we say?
Yeah, it was presented by the students. Obviously, the students had to go and do a case study of. Initially, it was called Marketing the Green Dots, and it was centered around you being able to market to people whose evidence of their presence was the green dots that showed on the map. So I'll be really interested to see how that goes. As I say, I have already spoken to. The main guy behind it down there. He had a long chat yesterday in New Zealand, and he's very keen now to take it on to the next level, and that'll be nice to see some sort of development like that going on in Second Life again, because it's all been a little bit quiet for new developments in there.
Unless they're all under our radar. Somebody was asking me yesterday, are there any Dizzy Banjos, another friend of the channel, was here just before the show. He couldn't stay. But it's asking what kind of discussions are going on at the moment, because like me, he's a fan of discussion programs or discussion events, and I would say there are quite a lot going on, but they're not all televised, and some of them are under the radar. You've really got to hunt for them, but all this stuff's good. So finally, let's just say hello to Petlove. Hi, Petlove.
Hello.
Anything particular on your radar before we move into open discussion?
Sure. Of course, I'm always from a camera or machinima point of view, but Thoth Jansen opened his Area 54 club last night with a 4-hour streamed event, streaming in music from a Swedish trance concert that was just fantastic. He had 60 people on the sim for 4 hours, which I think is a record. And lots of viewers on live stream, so check out Area 54 in Second Life when you get a chance. It's a really neat club with holographic media on the walls. You have to play the media button. It's very pretty. And also Nicole X Moonwall has submitted 3 films on Vimeo. If you search Petlove, you'll find the films on Vimeo. And we'd like some feedback on that. So go ahead and check that out. And all this talk about Linden coming under scrutiny is financially with the Inworld currency is fascinating, don't you think?
Well, yes. Yeah.
The ramifications are, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that it would be wise for them at this point to really make a big push to reintegrate educators and get those universities back that they lost a few years ago? Won't that be beneficial to them and the universities, since sheltered tax entities are going to be needed?
That's an interesting.
We have recently seen them making a push to get some of them back.
Maybe that's why. I was wondering.
Joining dots here.
In retrospect.
That's an intriguing take on it, not just getting the educators back, but because of the currency connection, grants and money laundering, could be interesting. Well, let's move into this now as a general topic. By the way, we showed your Area 54 clip last week, and I'm familiar with. I get an awful lot of stuff from Nicola X. She comes up with some very peculiar stuff, which I'm never quite sure whether it's safe to use here. I'm going to look out the ones on Vimeo, because mostly I get them from YouTube from her. So we'll see about that. And give you feedback accordingly.
Thank you so much.
Let's move into this financial affairs department, so to speak. We should probably have Bayer Sellers here or something, shouldn't we? Now I think about it, it's going presumably to affect the in-world economy quite a little bit. I mean, obviously people have to declare taxes on any significant amount of money they take out of Second Life, i.e. when they convert lindens to real money. I mean, that always has been a real world affair. If you make a profit in Second Life and take the profit out, because it's tradable and, you know, it's subject to your income tax or whatever in the country you're in. But this could obviously have greater ramifications, because I foresee that it would mean that the Linden dollar had to be treated as more or less a real-life currency from the word go. In other words, you couldn't just say, oh, this is game money, or this is tokens, as the Lindens like to call it, and, you know, then forget about it until the real-world exchange happens. How does everybody feel about this? Or the implications?
The one thing, as I understand this so far, the issue here is that Linden Lab both sells the currency and acts as the exchange vehicle, and that is a setup which is ripe for money laundering and illegal financial transactions. And I guess the thing that comes to my mind is there was a couple of years ago there was quite a bit of discussion about gold farming, originating, you know, largely from China, and there may have been Korea may also have been a notable player in that, and involving World of Warcraft, where people would basically spend hours and hours and hours doing things to raise money within World of Warcraft, which would then get swapped out into real money, and where the amount of money involved as it translated into the local organic space economy was significant. You know, where 50 cents an hour is a lot of money. Where you look at that same kind of transaction in the United States or Europe, and it's laughable. I mean, you know, it's kind of like, give me a break. You know, I'm not going to work for 50 cents an hour. So I'm just kind of wondering about, you know, tie-ins with some of that discussion. It seems to me that the real issue here is going to be for Linden is the onus is going to be on Linden Lab as far as the significant additional reporting requirements and hoops that they will have to go through if they maintain it as a tradable, exchangeable currency. And at least one of the articles I saw said that Linden Lab could well decide to dump Lindens entirely and do a straight across the board cash-based transaction, which would get them out of being the exclusive issuers of the currency.
And then, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking then, presumably the opposite of this is true too. They could actually create it as a total internal currency and not tradable for real world currency. I'm not suggesting they will, because they'd lose a huge number of people. But
what if they did that?
Yeah. But this the issue of gold farming, you know, as it's called, has been around a long while, particularly in games like WoW. And, you know, you hear of people in America, you know, sort of there was some, I forget who it was, there was some guy who was employed to do a job and then just sat at home and did nothing and subcontracted out to China. And made a huge profit, you know, which cost him barely a fraction of his salary, and the rest of his salary is going into his pocket. And people were also, you know, who are out doing things in the US or whatever, you know, hired full-time people in China or somewhere to actually, you know, farm gold for them, you know, do the work that made the money. So there is a lot of this, I think, that goes on already. And maybe one of the benefits of, you know, you see it in the fashion blogs a lot, in Second Life, is that, you know, people living in third world countries where the dollar has a really high value, and subsequently the Linden dollar does, you know, can actually make a good living out of transactions that would be laughed at in the States or even here in the UK. So, you know, it's great news for workers in the third world almost. There are clearly a lot of issues here, but I think it's going to be a headache for Linden Labs because there's going to be much more paperwork, bureaucracy involved. But is it going to impact the user?
Well, I think there's some interesting issues here. Before we even get to the user, there's other uses that can be made of a virtual currency. For example, do you remember Bettina Tizzi had set up a huge art show a few years ago, not possible in real life?
Yes, indeed.
It was wonderful. And one of them that was really impressive to me was about the Zimbabwe currency, which was a site that was just covered with huge piles of Zimbabwe dollars or whatever, or pounds or whatever they have. All of which could be exchanged for one linden. And because Zimbabwe is in the grip of hyperinflation, you could actually use the lindens as a safe haven currency. But if you put your savings, you transferred your savings out of Zimbabwe and into the linden dollar, which has no kind of conventional currency restrictions on it, you could actually protect yourself against hyperinflation.
Wasn't there an instance a few years ago, I'm sure I was reading up on this recently, where there's some landmark point in Second Life's history where a lot of people are upset by Linden revaluing their dollar. And it basically wiped out lots of value of people that had lots of land in Second Life. I think it happened once, but at some point in Second Life history, probably before my time, they did a total revaluation of the exchange rate, which meant people who had put more money in to Second Life than they could possibly get out.
There have been several kind of financial things over the years. There was the attempt to impose a land tax, which failed because the residents rebelled. That was much smaller in those days, and
that was back in the early days.
Yeah, and the residents could act concertedly like that. Yes, there was a reevaluation at one point. I think Ham may know more about that than me.
I can't say I know a lot about it, but I do remember at various times the conversations coming up. Funny enough, a lot of conversations along this level took place in quiet coffee areas around various SLCCs that I attended, and where I think those of us who invested a certain level of real money into this project called Second Life were seriously wondering whether we'd ever get it back out again. Just get back at what we put in, never mind make any kind of a profit out of it, because there was a lot of, in the early years, which when I joined, there was a lot of excitement about what Anne Chi-Chung had done, making the front page of Time magazine about becoming a millionaire through virtual worlds. And in reality, she basically was effectively, she was profiteering at the time on an upsurge of business in Second Life. And it peaked very quickly and then disappeared again. So I think around the grid right now, and I'd be very surprised if this was not the case, around the grid right now, there's a certain level of fatalism that what we have in Second Life is, yes, it's ours and it's unique. Is it worth anything? Well, in reality, probably not. There's so much empty space around the grid right now that you can almost have for nothing because nobody wants it and nobody's using it. And it's to me, it's very difficult to see how we can genuinely put value on what we have here in Second Life. And because of that, it's almost impossible to put any value on the currency that we're going to be using to work in here.
Value is a very interesting word when you try to apply it to Second Life. So much of it is intangible. But there is an economy here, and the Fed has realized that they're missing out on taxes. I was wondering if Linden Lab does decide to make each individual responsible for their own spending and taxation and whatever, like that would be really difficult, wouldn't it, for the people in here who do make an income? I would think.
But
I think a lot
of who's in charge as well. I mean, I'm going to be living in Kazakhstan, so are they going to chase me down in Kazakhstan and say that, by the way, I owe them $54 this month, which is taxation on my Inworld currency transactions, and so that would then. Well, if they went down that road, they would then suggest that Linden Labs would now have to become the collector of the taxes as well, and of course that would immediately put all the tax levels would basically push up the price of everything you do in here. And as long as it stays in here, it's fine. But as soon as you move it in or out, you're going to be subject to a foreign tax that you might not be liable to in the real world. So,
yeah. Well, also if you just look at U.S. Bank law, and that's how banks work. You put money in and out of banks, and you pay interest. I mean, the bank collects interest and endeavors to make money on your money, but you're not paying taxes to the bank. The bank is responsible. The bank has responsibilities for reporting transactions of over a certain amount.
That's true.
If you take out more than $10,000 U.S. in cash in a single whack, that has to be reported, and that's all part of the fallout with 9/11. But they're not responsible for collecting the tax on that. They have a responsibility to report interest earnings to you. And there's probably some requirement if somebody has interest earnings above a certain dollar threshold, that they also send that same report to the IRS. But they don't have any responsibility for telling you have to pay X dollars taxes on it.
Okay.
It's rather funny that the Linden dollar as an exchange rate has always been pinned to the US dollar, which is not very surprising. It's a server-based platform based in the US, but as a virtual world, it is very much a global platform. And obviously, if I want to draw money out of Second Life, I don't draw it out in American dollars, put it in an American bank, then transfer it to a UK bank. It does actually come straight to me. So I can understand that they would have to have monitoring jurisdiction over funds, like PayPal. If it's a small amount, it goes through. If it's a big amount, they huff and ha. But it seems to me that if the Linden dollar can be perceived as a genuine currency, virtual currency, all currency is virtual, quite frankly, then it should be, tradable with a different exchange rate against every other existing currency, rather than just specifically the US dollar, because as Sam says, if he's in wherever it is, his town, I've forgotten, he presumably wants to be able to put money in and bring money out of Second Life in that local currency, which his bank account is, say, working in at that given point in time. And I can't conceive that it would be reasonable under any circumstance for money to be taxed at the US end if it is coming out to if it's been exchanged directly for another foreign currency like the UK pound or something.
So Linden Lab is going to need a whole new department of international accountants, and I guess anybody who is looking for a job, they might want to consider sending them a note.
Those are the people who make money on this sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It will be exactly. It's hiring all the lawyers to go with the paperwork that the US government provides. I do think it raises a greater issue, which goes beyond on finance, of course, really here, and that is we all know that law is wherever the servers reside, quite frankly. So, I mean, if I start a virtual world and I have it on nice ecologically powered server farms in, say, Iceland, hi Ham, energy efficient, the power costs less and whatever, but more to the point, the law of that virtual world, in effect, will be Icelandic law, because that's where the server farms are.
If the corporate headquarters are there.
Yeah, well, exactly. Now, if those server farms are actually rented and used in Iceland by a company whose headquarters are elsewhere, then some aspects of the law translate to where they're based, where the company is based. And it seems to me that we're getting into a real dilemma, not just with virtual worlds, but with PayPal and Bitcoins and stuff like this, where to me, I've always thought all currency is virtual anyway. I mean, it's only a piece of paper saying I owe this much. As we all know, there's not enough physical, tangible money, gold, in the banks for everybody to withdraw their money from the banks at the moment. Most of it's fake money that they're sitting on through loans and complex arrangements. It's not backed up by any real physical goods anymore. It's
well, and that's been true for a long time.
It has, since credit cards and everything else came in, if not longer. Ever since there have been tokens to represent value, except possibly gold coins, which did have a physical weight of their own, money currencies have been virtual. So the new virtual currencies, as we call them, aren't really that much different. But the dilemma to me is that surely they have to tie in with the existing virtual system and the international community. You can't just say, oh, well, America or Britain is going to monopolize on virtual currencies. So I think there's a much deeper long-term...
That's so interesting. It really is. It's fascinating.
Well, can I just give you one quote from that article, which I think is relevant to what we've been talking about today in various areas, and that is, if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
What paragraph of the article was that?
No, I'm sorry, it is actually there. It's actually in that article. I have good business, it says, and it's a quote allegedly from FinCEN. That would be exactly their view. FinCEN goes by the approach: if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Okay.
I have duck gestures. I can sound like a duck, but that doesn't make me a duck.
Well, I'm sorry, this is a quotation from the government department.
I'm not sure that quote is from the government department. I think that's from the author of the...
that's right, of the gesture.
He takes the view, yes. He says FinCEN goes by the approach, so I presume...
We've got Caucusman in the channel chat as well, and he's been actually quoting from the New Scientist article on the U.S. Treasury Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is basically they're all pretty much quotes that tie in with the article at Hypergrid Business, but. No, it's well, clearly this is going to run and run. I mean, until the situation is resolved in the organic world with the U.S. Treasury, we won't really have any idea how that will affect the treasuries of other currencies. The UK Treasury, for example, I'm sure they could use a bit more money. They seem to be after it all over the place. And more importantly, we won't have any idea how it's going to affect virtual worlds. And although most of the open sim worlds at the moment don't engage in any kind of currency, there are actually currencies on open sim, and they are certainly based outside the US. They tend to be, they're not necessarily tied to a grid. I think OS Grid has a currency of sorts, which is presumably tied to them. But of course, a lot of open sims are run as platforms in other places other than the US. They're based in Franco grids in Europe. There's quite a few of them up in Sweden. So, the international implications here are great. There's things like the web exchanges where you can convert your lindens into OS grid currency and vice versa. So they're independent operations on the web that allow you to exchange one virtual world currency for another virtual world currency, is still bypassing the so-called real world currency.
Do you think other governments, other world governments, will take the same stance that ours is now with virtual currency?
Well, I think if the US Treasury starts trying to define this and literally integrating virtual world currencies into their own hypothetically virtual currency already, then other countries will have no option but to do similar, if only to counteract it. I mean, you can't have somebody paying tax to two separate governments, for example. It's just it wouldn't go down well at all.
Right.
Yeah, well, Mel, I don't think. I guess I don't see it as so much a tax issue as what people do with the money and how people use such an exchange to move virtual, say, Second Life money into real world dollars, and the fact that you could take dollars, as taking Zimbabwe as an example. If you took Zimbabwe dollars and you bought lindens with it, and then you converted those lindens to U.S. dollars,
yeah,
for example, then you've got it's the money laundering piece of this and organized crime and that sort of thing. I think that is the driving force. At least that's how I read it. There's income issues here because if you're laundering money, then it's just like taking money from the U.S. and sticking it in a bank in the Caribbean to get it out, or in a Swiss bank to get it outside of the tax system.
Yeah.
And people do that, and people will continue to do that. But at least, certainly since 9/11, the international cooperation on tracking, substantial dollar exchanges and transactions has really tightened up, because of I think the very accurate perception that people who engage in terrorist activities are moving money around, and they may be able to carry dollars physically from one place to another, or gold, or whatever, or drugs. But at some point, it may need to be translated into cash kinds of money, and if they can do it electronically and stay under the radar, then hey, so much the better.
Well, Britain's had a long history of this with I don't know where. I'm not getting into political discussion here, especially with Hams here as well. But we, the years of the IRA and the troubles in Northern Ireland, there was there was a perpetual lookout for trafficking in drugs, arms, money, and things, going into possible IRA hands, and the modern tracking is simply that same sort of issue on a greater scale. And I agree with you, it is crime and terrorism, if that is different, that they're on the trail of here. But what I see is whenever regulations of this sort come in, there's a massive paperwork, there is a massive bureaucracy set up there, and invariably it does touch on the individuals. It's not simply a background, it never succeeds in being simply a background mechanism for tracking large sums. I'm interested to ask Saffia here, because in Second Life, for example, we've got one real good example of not a successful business per se, but a successful charity in Relay for Life. We raise huge amounts of funds for Relay for Life. Now, principally, that's the American Cancer Society, though they do work with international societies too. But you have operations going on in Second Life where the Linden currency is used to actually collect vast sums of money that then of course have to be converted to organic world currency and to be moved to the funds of the charity there. Now, vast as they are, they're probably not vast enough to sort of be earmarked for possibly going to terrorist activities or major criminal stuff, but it must be an example of where virtual worlds are used for a totally beneficial purpose, which may get infinitely more complicated with surveillance on levels of currency being transferred. And that's, it's the sheer bureaucracy that will be in place that worries me there, not the intent of the legislation, but the practical side of enforcing it.
Well, the Relay for Life thing always has been a bit more bureaucratic than it appears. If you've been to any Relay for Life event, you'll have seen the vendors, and they're not designed by residents. They are official Relay for Life vendors, which people taking part in the event have to use. And the reason for that is, I think, at least partly because there's various hoops that the money has to go through when it's involved in such an organisation as Relay for Life and as the American Cancer Society, and the money is going through in such big order. I think, it's slightly different if you have a benefit to raise funds for your local hospital or something like that, and it's a lower thing. You can then take the money out in PayPal and pay it in. One of the problems is there's a kind of balance here between organisations that are so big that they have this kind of bureaucratic structure that people have to adhere to raise money, and organisations which are basically people's pet charities, which they are trying to raise money for, which is hugely open to abuse. And I wouldn't say that if dodging tax on that money is the first level of abuse there.
Well, I guess for the moment, apart from monitoring, it's still going to be down to people declaring money as they take it out, if it's of any significant amount. And we just hope that this that the bureaucracy involved in this new monitoring won't put the kind of extra costs that Linden Labs may have to pay won't be reflected on the way they treat the world itself and things. But I've got a feeling this is all going to run and run. Has anybody got any final thoughts on this before we move on to the agenda?
I just hope Linden Labs can manage easily and efficiently to deal with the regulations, so it doesn't cause the virtual world any trouble.
Right, yeah. I think we all agree on that one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Ham has already told us a bit more about the Philip Linden's new project, of course, because it was discussed before we announced it today. But any thoughts on this? It's exciting that Philip's getting back into what essentially is virtual reality kind of stuff, even though it may turn out to be very different. Any thoughts on this? Open house.
How does his concept apply to business? Is this a melding, a spot where business and virtual worlds can be melded more easily? Is that the whole idea?
Well, there wasn't anything that was at that degree of practicality that in the rather cryptic
announcement.
Well, it wasn't an announcement so much as looking at the website. Which is essentially.
Isn't it fair to say that what the website is doing is that there is a plan, that there's a kind of an experimental case study being done, let's call it that for want of anything else, on using the existing internet in a high speed way to turn virtual reality kind of projects into something a lot more seamless and a lot less server heavy. That was just the conversation he had with me, was just that. And what I see in that advertisement was that they've got the kernel of the idea. They've got an objective they're trying to get to, and now they're just trying to hire in the sort of people who are going to be able to do this kind of stuff with an open mind, and not just say, well, the way I did it before was this, but the way I did it before is not going to work anymore. So I see it really as I think this has been in discussion for some time with his team, and I think the announcement on the website is there to just start opening it up to see who's out there who could join them to see where they can take it. He wants to get it away from the constant server-based system. He feels that using the power of cloud computing, where you can have 50 servers across the world, could tackle one job for 5 minutes and sort it all out very quickly. So to me, the best example I can give is, he said to me, wouldn't it be amazing if you had a group of musicians playing somewhere in a live music venue, and they wanted to perform in Second Life simultaneously, and using something like the Kinect or similar technology, that what appeared in the virtual venue was an absolute replication of what the guys were doing on stage. Every time they smiled, every time they opened their mouth, every time they moved, came out all in sync with their music, with no lag or latency going on with it. And that was one of the visions he said to me. He said, can you imagine what a game changer that would be?
That actually is the perfect answer to Petlove's question about, it's a good example of the real world application. I mean, we already have bands like Virtual Live Band. We should maybe have got one of them in here. Doing this their way already. They still have the lag. You've got to wait 20 or 30 seconds for it to get down. But they mix. They prefer, each musician's in a different company. They manage to perform in real time together, even though it's difficult because of the lag by the time it gets into Second Life. The only other way of doing it is to have a whole band in the same room. Whereas this immediate, no delay kind of thing is a perfect example of, you'd just be able to go out to any real world band and say, well, we can stream you, immediately using this method. And that as Ham says, is a game changer.
Yeah, Mal, there's a significant difference in my mind between what Ham describes on the latency thing and what Virtual Live Band does. Virtual Live Band is using technology that's been around for a while, which is basically you have 5 people who are in a band in 5 different locations. And it starts with the drummer who starts drumming the song. And that is relayed to the next player, who is, say, the bass player. The bass player hears the drum part and adds the bass part. And then that is relayed to the rhythm guitar player, who adds their bit, who relays it to the lead guitarist, who adds their bit, who then relays it to the vocalist. And at each of those steps, there's delay. But because they're playing to the relay, it's in sync with the relay.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
If you were taking the vocalist, where the vocalist is in the song, and where the drummer is in the song, and at the same time, they're in completely different measures. They're completely different points in the song. So that's latency.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I was putting it in simple terms for the complexity.
The difference would be is if all 5 of those people were sitting in their individual location studios with a screen in front of them where they could see the other players feeding in, and they're all playing together in that setting and able to cue off each other, which is super significant with any kind of ensemble music playing, and that would be in sync, and that would be a huge accomplishment. You can't do it. You technically cannot do that at this point in time.
It's really interesting. I mean, Philip himself is on sort of record as having said that, we all know that he brought Second Life online later than he intended because he had to wait for broadband and the speeds. And now, we have fiber optic broadband and everything else. And he's also on record as saying maybe he did bring it online too early. So I suspect, whatever the vision of work here is something ahead of the curve, as it probably would be with him. And, but he's certainly got the background and the expertise for sort of coordinating something like this. So I would hope it's going to develop into something quite big. As Ham says, I mean, I think the news release at this time is principally to attract more attention from investors rather than to lay out any set groundwork. But I'd love to see it. Yeah. And Dev's Region is saying it's just with Linden Lab. No, it's not. It's whether it's tied in with Coffee and Power and Work Club, I'm not sure. But
it's independent of that. Although they're using Work Club as a, they've got some jobs posted or some little projects posted that are in Work Club.
Yeah. We've known for some time that Philip has been looking for people with virtual reality experience. So, yeah, I'm excited. I mean, you know, it may be quite a while before we hear much more, but I'd like to get a hold of him, maybe interview him for a chat or something, and see what he's prepared to reveal. Any other thoughts on this? Any other thoughts on this particular thing? Anything,
no.
Philip, anything Philip does.
Just want to see what happens.
Anything Philip does is always of interest to Second Life users. Quite frankly, that's the thing. Okay, well let's start rounding up with some looking at other sort of events. I've got interestingly, I got a thing this morning with some lovely sort of photos of a small parcel with an exhibition called Mathematical Art, Escher's Relativity and Seilfert Surface. And it's one of these real Escher-y sort of looking builds. But the most interesting thing about it is that it's housed, the parcel is on a server called Daboom, which apparently is the very first region ever created in Second Life back in 2002. The actual sim it's on has been there before SL was officially launched to the public. So it's on the oldest Second Life sim. I hope it works properly still.
It's probably not the same hardware.
Yeah, on a new server by now, probably.
What, fourth generation or something now?
One hopes.
Yeah. But yeah, it's sort of it's a real world version of MC Escher's Relativity, and by an artist called Furia Freeloader. So I don't suppose anybody here has actually been to that yet, but no, certainly from the photos I've seen, it is a sim to go to. In fact, I found the blog that reported on this is Second Sighting, all one word, .wordpress.com. So if you want to see the pictures before you go, you can check that out there. I will try and go in and get some quick camera pics of that maybe for next week.
It will be interesting to go take a look, given that the various things with Sculpties and Mesh, as far as being able to recreate Escher in 3D, because when I first got into Second Life, one of my earliest searches was a search for Escher. I mean, we're going back to 7 years ago now, and there were a couple of things that people had built using prims that were models of Escher paintings that were quite fascinating. So I'm interested in checking that out to see what the current state of the art is.
Well, maybe we'll pop along there later after the show and get a bit of footage or something for next week. Sounds like a good one. Now, Honor Macmillan isn't with us today, but she's still blogging, and she had a blog, I think it was this morning's blog anyway, about the landscape of Beatrix Potter.
Yes, that was gorgeous, wasn't it?
Isn't it? I mean, Beatrix Potter, for those of you who don't know her, is a unique children's storybook writer, but illustrated too, and just, a superb old-time mood to it, really. And the sim this is on is simply, I think we did actually have a clip last week on this briefly. It's called The Noble Storybook. And I'm looking at Honor's pictures as usual, and it's got a lovely feel to it, really. So just old-time, simple, and probably very intriguing to wander around. It actually does the actual architectural quality does actually, from the photos, is actually reminiscent, not a copy, but reminiscent of Potter illustrations. So.
On the subject of landscape as well, I'd like to mention Neva River, which is Neva River, which has attracted some attention. It's a sim designed by Neva Crystal, and it's her own private home estate. But periodically she does a redesign on it, and when she does, she opens it up for a 2-week period, it's absolutely beautiful. If you like beautiful landscapes, well done in Second Life. Never River is really worth seeing. And today is the last day, so you should go immediately this program ends, because you're not going to get a chance until she redesigns the sim again to see it.
I had better let on, actually, that I went, it was before last week's show, it disgraced about 10 days ago, and I've actually filmed 7 minutes of that. I've yet to overdub my voice on it, so I am planning to do so and upload it here to show on Week in Review at some point. So it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. In fact, filming is cheating, really, because you need to be on the ground walking around to fully appreciate it. But you know, I got a sort of aerial view and stuff. So. Good stuff, that. Yes, so yeah, definite point, definite way. It's actually been extended for a week this year, so this is the last day of the extended week, so do get there. And I was tempted to, every time I say Never River, I say no relation to coffee. At least one person thought it was maybe a river created by somebody we all know. And this is another one. I think I haven't got the link open here. I've just got it on my list, but I think this was from Print Perfect too. Actually, Print Perfect is supposed to honour Macmillan. Ceres City is celebrating its 3rd birthday.
Yes, it had a party last night, and it's quite interesting. They're having a new estate manager. Someone called Edward Pierce, who is very well known in the Steamlands, and he's doing a lot of kind of updating of textures and replacing things with mesh to save prim costs. So it's very much being developed at the moment, and it's the most marvelous region we have. It was the home of the Black Mirror, where Harlan Quinn had his offices, so we spent quite a lot of time over there. And in fact, we have a newspaper office there called the Daily Prim, which was a spin-off of the Prim Graph, and we still keep those newspaper offices there. There's a murder mystery you can go and play in the Prim Graph offices, and we'll probably be developing some more games like that. It's a great place, and there's parties there and everything. It's got wonderful Prohibition feel with this wonderful diesel punk edge. Diesel punk, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like steampunk, which is much better known, but with a kind of, it's the future as seen in the 1930s. The kind of there's a few kind of books and novels, H.G. Wells' The Shape of Things to Come, that sort of thing. Jet, somebody, and the there's a film with the name, but yeah, it takes kind of the 19. You know the one I mean, don't you?
I got the DVD, I think, but yes, I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, I used to get so good. Well, I still do get confused. You know, you got the steampunk, your cyberpunk, diesel punk, and all, you know, anything ending in punk, actually. And they all, of course, are very allied in many ways. There's so much crossover between them. You know, you could walk from a cyberpunk to a steampunk to a diesel punk sim, and it could be a smooth transition, if you see what I mean. But yes, yeah, great stuff. Ceres City is a great place. I'm just looking at, actually, oddly enough, I don't know why they're on this list, but there was an update during the week from Virtual World's Best Practices in Education. We must get Felon back on the show in the next couple of weeks to get an official update on all that, I guess. And also at the top of this list was something else to do with OpenSim. Yeah. Oh yes, the successor viewer to Imprudence, which is probably the most popular viewer in OpenSim. That's the one I use. The successor is called Kokua, Kokua, and it's sort of in perpetual beta because they don't want to bring it out until it's really thoroughly good to be a first edition, so to speak. But they have announced that beta 3.5.1 is available this week. So if you've been testing that, you may want to download the latest instance of that. Right. So scanning my little list there, there's obviously plenty of stuff to see in Second Life as always. Oddly enough, I'm looking at my list for this week and I can't see many hunts on it, which is most unusual because it's normally filled with my bookmarks for hunts. So there is still, of course, the Aztec, I forget the full title, hunt going on for Mad P still. The quest for the missing Inca or something.
That's right, yeah. Not an Aztec, an Inca.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
just a wee bit off as usual. They all sound the same.
Oh, but I have got news, yeah. Thinking of Mad P, I have got news which I think I can share.
Oh.
Can I share it? I think I can. There are going to be 2 hunts at SL 10B community celebration at the moment that I know of. One is going to be the same item a day story style hunt that we had last year with David Abbott, and David is working on something new for this year's SL10B, which is going to be brilliant. And there's going to be a second hunt which is going to be organised by Mad P.
Oh, wonderful.
Right.
That'll be fun. That'll be great.
So, yeah, there's going to be 2 hunts, and I think it's going to be really, really good. There is, of course, a huge hunt at Fantasy Fair, which they're not telling me an awful lot about, but which sounds very exciting. They have a whole sim given over to the hunt.
Wow. Will they be on Happy Hunting?
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, yes.
Good.
Yes.
I think we must try and get Zander, who's great to have on talk shows anyway. We must try and get him on in a week or 2 because he's particularly involved with the Fantasy Fair, isn't he? And as well as Relay for Life in general. So, yeah. Bevan tells us that Gracie thanked us for showing a video. We must get her on. And Ham has actually put into the live stream chat a rather long convoluted URL, unfortunately, which I'm not going to read out. He can if he wants to, pointing to the UWA Edu or about the awards he mentioned earlier. And I would actually say that when this show finishes, if you're watching live at Week in Review, you'll be able to see 2 new entries for the Reflections Machinima contest, which will be the first on the show there. There's Paulina's Little Rascal and something very intriguingly called The Mirror Lies. I rather like that title when you think of reflections and mirrors and the mirror lies. I don't know. We'll see what it's all about in a wee while, no doubt. Okay. So do you want to read out that link on Ham, or should we just? I guess if they go to news.uwa.edu.org, they can.
Yes, or they can just type UWA. Of Western Australia, edu into Google, and it'll come up there. Wade Halverson was the professor involved. I was speaking to him only this morning, in fact, about it and the next thing he wants to do, as I say. So yeah, it is kind of long and complex. What can I say? Reading it out, I don't think will make it any easier for people to remember or deal with.
That's true. Maybe like some of the sessions, long and complex.
Ow.
Well, look, just go for www.news.uwa.edu.au. How about that? And you'll find it in there. Yeah, it'll be listed in there.
Good. It works.
Great. Okay, I think I've probably missed something, but I think I've come to the end of my list of sort of stuff and whatever. Let's just move around the seats and see if anybody's got any last minute things they want to get in. What's up with you this coming week, Petlove?
This coming week, don't tell anybody, but not too much. I get to work on I get to work on some projects of my own that have been waiting and waiting. So yeah, it's gonna be a good week.
I promise we won't tell anybody, will we?
Yeah, thank you.
live on air. Indeed. Ham, anything up and coming apart from the move?
Well, yes. Up and coming from me is going to be starting this project for UWA in terms of their requirement to build probably a 4-sim site, which is going to incorporate the 3 universities that are going to be involved in future work in this area, and also, I suppose, getting down to the doctor for some flea powder from when they get up off the seat.
Can I ride with you?
You weren't going to let that rest, were you?
No.
So we got to ban all the felines from the show from now on, have we?
Oh dear.
Or find some virtual.
It's all the scratching. It's all the scratching that's been the problem. It's just everybody's scratching, you know.
We can find some virtual flea powder to pour down on us while we're broadcasting, a bit like snow or something. It would look like the scene outside the window most days at the moment. Okay, Saffia, anything else new?
No, I was just going to say I'm really excited actually about the British Library digitisation project.
Yes, I thought you would be. Yeah.
Yeah. I am. I'm working in real life at the moment with a project to digitise slides, some very significant historical medical slides that were used by people like Sherrington and Eccles when they were developing neurology and neuroscience as a discipline and discovering things like the neuron. And we're taking these slides, which still have validity as teaching tools today, as well as having huge historical significance, and we are digitizing them. And I may not take the majority of my audience along with me here, but I find medical slides incredibly beautiful. Images of the human body in medical images are, when it's not diseased, which does look unpleasant, is actually I find incredibly beautiful. And I'm talking about things like histology pictures and that sort of thing.
Well, it's very strange. Putting CSI aside for a minute, not a particularly well-known one, but I know I haven't spoken to him for ages. But a comic strip artist who was a friend of mine many years ago, and his work I really loved. He actually reminded me of another American illustrator, but he first came to me with his early illustration work and later did comic strips. But the funny thing was, he was a medical illustrator originally, and his job was to sit in theatres and draw while people were being cut open and stuff. And it was really fascinating at that experience, the things that enabled him to draw. It wasn't just his drawing ability, it was the complete understanding of all this anatomy and stuff underneath it from a medical perspective, which probably, made some of his ideas so good. TV front, I know Designing Worlds isn't back for another, is it 3 or 4 weeks, yes?
It's a couple of weeks before we come back,
weeks.
yeah.
Happy Hunting? Happy
Hunting, we're filming on the 12th, and the first episode will be broadcast on the 19th. So we're coming towards the end of our nice, peaceful rest time.
Right, it just seems like yesterday. So both. How about? I did mean to ask you on air. How about Metaverse Arts? Is there any good return?
We are planning. We've got things set up, and we have a new camera person who'll be doing it as well. Don't we, Pet?
Yes, we do. Not me.
Okay.
Not Pet. Emma is going to be the new camera person for Metaverse Arts, and we have got a show planned, and we hope to come back very soon with that. But for me, what I shall be doing this week, I shall mostly be learning Premiere.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Because I'm working on the documentary, so I'm learning Premiere to do it.
Yeah. I kind of like Premiere, although the version I've got, I think, is it doesn't handle MP4s and stuff, and I don't think it can even import Windows Media Video. So I tend to have to either work from scratch with this or with AVR files and things, which are bloody big. But it's a good program. It always was. So I wish you luck with that. It's not the easiest of interfaces to learn, but once you learnt it, it's very good. I think. Right, so I think it's now over to Tara, who, not just for her final word, but a traditional roundup, including maybe the things she forgot at the beginning. I don't know. Over to you, Tara.
Actually, I went back through and looked at my list, and there wasn't anything else except the Neva River closing today, which Saffia covered nicely, and something that's definitely on my list to do before the day is out, because it was one that I meant to do and it got sidetracked. So that's certainly to be done. This is this being the 7th of April, the 15th of April is coming up rather fast, which anyone in the U.S. knows is tax day. And so I'm going to be spending some quality time doing doing some bookkeeping and seeing what the damage looks like. And aside from that, I think I probably will come in and mangle some prims just for a little comic relief. And that's it for me for this week.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a plan, as you say. Yes, a few last minute visits and yeah, taxes. Never mind. Has to be done. Okay, well, I think we can sort of call it a wrap for this week. Thanks everybody for listening. Hope you'll join us again next week. Don't run too far if you're watching us live, because as soon as we get back to the main channel, the Metaverse Week in Review continues with 2 new machinima clips from the UWA, a look at virtual art at the LEA, various virtual installations, and a bit of virtual music too. Nothing too heavy, but just a nice selections of things to chill out to, generally speaking. I'd like to thank everybody's Inworld today, as ever, my partner Tara. Who's gone silent? Saffia.
Bye.
Oops.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Saffia. Thank you also to Rambler.
Yes, thank you guys. Great to be here, and see you hopefully next week.
Yeah, I'm always
Good luck.
We are really on the day, because you realise that Rambler is the mayor of Dublin. It says it over his head, We don't get mayors on here very often, so thank you, Ham.
I want to know what it says on your T-shirt in red.
Oh, it says it's actually it was a T-shirt that was brought out for Arthur's Day, and Arthur's Day, as you know, is a great excuse for the Irish to generate another festival celebrating Sir Arthur Guinness. And it's become a worldwide festival. In the space of 2 years, it's become a worldwide festival where everybody is encouraged to drink Guinness. Talk about a great marketing ploy. So it's Arthur's Day.
Okay.
Figures.
Thank you.
You did any excuses to be convinced to drink Guinness.
Absolutely. You've got it, man. You've got it in one.
Okay, and also, of course, thanks to the wonderful Petlove, who's also been filming this at the same time. How many people can multitask in
It's a pleasure.
extraordinary ways. Okay, so it's a wrap, and we're going to cut the broadcast here and move back to the main channel. So we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Mm.